In this video, we are going to be covering the first line of defense. The first line of defense is part of our immune system. The immune system is a very complex system that our body has in order to help fight off and prevent infections. The immune system is built of the first line, the second line, and the third line of defense. A characteristic thing about the first and second line is the fact that they are innate, which means they are natural, they are always present. And another thing is that they are non-specific. So the first and second line cannot create what we call memory. They do not have a preference on what they're trying to eliminate, just anything foreign to the body. While the third line, as we will later discuss, is going to have specific memory to specific foreign things. The first line of defense is built of two different types of barriers. We have our physical barriers and our chemical barriers. We have three physical barriers. The first one, and probably the biggest, is the skin. The skin is an awesome physical barrier because it is everywhere across our body, it sloughs off constantly, and it's really deep. So although to us we don't think it as being very deep, for a microbe, it would almost be as if the bacteria has to go to the moon and back in order to get through all of our skin. So it's a very deep layer for microbes. So the skin is a great physical barrier because, again, it's everywhere, it's thick, and it's going to slough off. And so microbes will constantly fall off of it. Another aspect is going to be our mucous membranes. In order to be a mucous membrane, you have to have mucus. And mucus is created by goblet cells. In addition, that's associated with mucous membranes are hair-like structures that are found in our body. And these hair-like structures are called cilia. So the cilia are going to beat in order to move the mucus across the membranes. So when things get trapped in the mucus and they're going to come out, we call it the mucociliary escalator. So in other words, the cilia are moving the mucus out of the membrane. Our last physical barrier is our normal flora. Remember that the normal flora are also called the resident flora. So these are the good bacteria that we have. These are the ones that are going to stay long term and provide beneficial effects to our body. More specifically, these are going to undergo microbial antagonism. Microbial antagonism was where the normal flora competes with the transient flora, the pathogenic bacteria, for space and nutrients. So the normal flora is taking up all of the space and the nutrients on and in our body, in our gastrointestinal system and on our skin, so that pathogenic bacteria aren't able to colonize and cause damage. So again, normal flora are going to undergo microbial antagonism. So they're going to compete with pathogenic bacteria, transient flora, to keep us safe. So these are your three physical barriers. Then we have 6 chemical barriers. The first one is sweat. When you lick your sweat or it falls in your mouth, how does it taste? It tastes really salty. And so sweat is creating this hypertonic environment. And remember, when you have a hypertonic environment, the water is going to leave the bacteria to follow the salt. And so this is going to cause the bacteria to shrivel and crenate. The next one is sebum. And sebum is the oil that's found on your skin. When you think of oil, do you think that water likes to associate it with it? It doesn't. So oil is going to repel water from being on the skin. So it's going to create a dry environment, an environment where there's a lack of water. And water is essential for life, and so if you create this harsh environment because of no water being present, the bacteria are not going to be able to grow very well. Then you have your gastric juices. So we have the gastrointestinal system. Gastro means stomach. So these are the stomach juices. So when you think of the stomach juices, what type of environment is this? This is a highly acidic environment. Many microbes can't survive the stomach acid. So the stomach acid is so acidic that it kills a lot of microbes. So this is going to be highly acidic. Then we have lactoferrin. Remember, with bacterial pathogenesis, there were siderophores. Siderophores steal host nutrients, specifically iron. This isn't going to be good for our body. It can cause anemia, which is a lack of iron or an iron deficiency. So lactoferrin is the equivalent of human siderophores, you could imagine. These are going to be competing with siderophores in order to steal back our nutrients, more specifically with lactoferrin, with iron. So compete with siderophores to steal back nutrients. And I'm going to put iron because that's a specific nutrient lactoferrin takes back. The last two chemical barriers are going to be specific to gram-positive bacteria and the one specific to gram-negative bacteria. The one that's specific to gram-positive bacteria is called lysozyme. So lysozyme is going to affect the peptidoglycan cell wall. And because gram-positive don't have that outer membrane to protect them from this, their cell wall is exposed to lysozyme. So I'm going to write gram-positive, and it's going to break apart peptidoglycan, but more specifically, it breaks apart the sugar linkages. So the linkages between the M and G sugars are broken by lysozyme. And then our last chemical barrier is defensin peptides. Defensin peptides are going to target gram-negative bacteria, and that's because these defensin peptides are going to insert themselves in a membrane. And because the gram-negative have an outer membrane as the first layer, they are susceptible to defensin peptides. So these defensin peptides are going to put themselves inside the membrane, and it's going to cause holes to form inside the outer membrane, which is going to disrupt the membrane and cause the bacteria to die, because the outer membrane is essential in order to control what is going through and into the gram-negative bacteria. So defensive peptides act very similar to the antibiotic polymyxin B. So they're going to insert themselves into the outer membrane, and what we're going to say is that they disrupt the outer membrane. So it's gram-negative, and they disrupt the outer membrane. And again, it's because they're going to cause pores to be formed. So these are your first line of defense, the two physical and chemical barriers. So again, these are all innate, which means they're naturally there, naturally occurring, and they're non-specific. So they're not targeting a specific microbe. So even though this is gram-negative and gram-positive, it's not targeting, for example, tetanus only. It's targeting all gram-positive. So these are all going to be innate and non-specific.